Hey fans and welcome, this is Bill Kovacs from the dantooinefreepress coming at you from our super secret and advanced restoration lab. Today we're going to experiment with a process known as Retrobrite. To be clear, Retrobrite is not a product, it's a process. It's a way of whitening plastic that has turned yellow over the years. I have before me 3 Stormtroopers from my personal collection as a boy, which I will show you as an example. If you can see, they have become quite yellow with age. This is a close-up of the Stormtroopers I took inside the house. Pay attention to the middle Stormtrooper. That was the yellowest of the 3. That's the one I'm going to work with. There are actually a couple of different methods of Retrobrite. We're trying the simplest method in this video. That method is hydrogen peroxide plus UV light. Another way that you can do the Retrobrite process is, in addition to hydrogen peroxide, you add baking soda. We're going to try that in a later video. Now, the normal hydrogen peroxide that you get at a Walmart or a supermarket or a drugstore, that's not going to be good enough for what we're trying to do. It's not strong enough. So we're going to use a hydrogen peroxide that you generally use for your hair. It's something that you can get from hair salons. You can also order it online from a place like Amazon. This is the hydrogen peroxide that my daughter let me borrow. It's what she uses to dye her hair. All hydrogen peroxide is a mixture of the hydrogen peroxide itself plus water. This here is a 40V or 40 volume. The number indicates the strength. 10V is 3%, 20V is 6%, 30V is 9%, and 40V is 12% hydrogen peroxide. This is the strongest that is available. And this is my dog Derby. He was curious as to what I was doing. I laid out the 3 Stormtroopers and chose the one that I thought was the yellowest. Now I'm going to take a brush and apply the peroxide. Looking back on this, I probably should have been wearing gloves. Anyway, what you want to do is apply the peroxide with a brush in a thick layer over the plastic. In the other method that I mentioned earlier, which uses baking soda in addition to peroxide, one of the purposes of the baking soda is to get the peroxide mixture to be thicker and stay in a layer over your Stormtrooper. Having applied the hydrogen peroxide to the Stormtrooper, the next step is to expose the Stormtrooper to UV light. I chose artificial UV light over sunlight. This is the UV light that I used, which I purchased from Amazon for about $15. This particular UV light came with a USB adapter. Now, I've never heard of anyone plugging a UV light into a computer drive, but hey, to each his own. And this is the wall plug that came with it. It's very similar to the wall plug you might get with, say, an iPhone. Now, I admit this is probably not the safest way to do this. However, I don't own the home that I'm living in right now, and I didn't want to attach it in any way that would be permanent. I have been using it this way for a couple of weeks because a certain germ is killed by UV light, and I can tell you that it hasn't gotten very hot. This light did come with hardware, so you can attach it to a wall or shelf. With the Stormtrooper in place, we turned on the UV light. And then after 12 hours, I flipped him over. So let me see if I can reach back into my high school chemistry and give you an explanation of why this should work. This here is a simplistic but useful model of an atom. An atom is made up of 3 types of particles: a particle with a positive charge called a proton, a particle with a negative charge called an electron, and a particle with no charge called a neutron. Now, the protons and the neutrons are in the middle of the atom called the nucleus, and orbiting around the nucleus are the electrons. This is the periodic table, which lists the elements in order of their atomic number, which means the number of protons in the nucleus, and it's organized in rows, which represent the orbits of electrons around the nucleus. Okay, now this is hydrogen, which has 1 electron in its outer orbit, and this is oxygen, which has 6 electrons in its outer orbit. So chemistry is all about balance. This here is a representation of the oxygen molecule. You'll see it has the 6 electrons in the outer orbit. It wants to have 8 electrons in its outer orbit. So it basically floats around and it's looking for other atoms that it can share electrons with so it can get that balance of 8 electrons in its outer orbit. This is a water molecule. A water molecule is made up of 1 oxygen atom and 2 hydrogen atoms. Now, because the hydrogen atoms have 1 electron in its outermost shell, that electron can be shared with the oxygen atom, and then you get 2 hydrogen atoms, and that helps the oxygen atom complete its outer shell with 8. As I remember my high school chemistry, water is a very stable molecule. So then you have hydrogen peroxide, and that is not a stable molecule. It is made up of 2 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms. The 2 oxygen atoms share 1 electron between them in the outermost shell, which means that both of the oxygen atoms will still have 1 more electron floating around in its outermost orbit that wants to share with another atom. So in walks hydrogen with its 1 electron in the outer shell. 1 hydrogen atom attaches to 1 of the oxygen atoms, and then a second hydrogen atom attaches to the second oxygen atom, and that's how you get hydrogen peroxide. And as I said, this is an unstable molecule, which means that the bonds between the atoms are easily broken, in particular when you come in contact with more oxygen. Now, oxygen likes to travel in pairs, and essentially 2 of the electrons in the outermost orbit will team up with 2 of the electrons of another atom of oxygen, and it will come together to form the oxygen molecule. Now, the plastic turns yellow because it has oxidized over the years, meaning that oxygen has been added to its surface. And in theory, what should be happening is when you apply hydrogen peroxide to the plastic, the chemical bonds get broken and the 2 oxygen molecules join up together to form the oxygen gas, and that's how it clears up and becomes white again. The point of the black light is simply to spark the chemical reactions in order to get the oxygen atoms to bond. Not bad for a lawyer who hasn't thought about high school science in 30 years. Shout out to my daughter. She's the scientific brain in this family. I had her look over the animation of what's going on the chemical level, and she confirmed for me that, well, it's overly simplistic, but relatively accurate. I actually found my childhood X-Wing fighter in the basement, and it was in pretty decent condition. My goal is to try to restore that X-Wing fighter later, and that's why I'm experimenting with the Stormtroopers now. So here are the results, and again, we're looking at the Stormtrooper in the middle. Here's a better side-by-side comparison, with the before on the left and the after on the right. I'm fairly satisfied with the results. So next time we're going to try with the hydrogen peroxide and the baking soda and see if it gives a significant difference. In the meantime, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to our channel. And if you would like notification whenever we publish a video in the future, please click the bell button. Thank you.